Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another Friday afternoon edition of the Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and we've got a jam-packed show for you here this afternoon, live on the Pro Cannabis Media network of various distribution channels out there on Roku and Apple and YouTube and LinkedIn Live and Facebook and Twitch. Don't forget Twitch, right? I'm probably going to end up in the chat room for most of this show because a lot of this show is going to be coming to you from New York City. That's right. That's the Big Apple, right? The CWCB Expo is in New York City at the Javits Center. It's a 3-day event, and Christopher Smith has been reporting from there all week, and he has a whole bunch of interviews with some really cool people that you definitely want to check out and hang in and watch a little bit later on this program. We also have a great little segment with Christopher and Deborah Borchardt. Of course, that's Deb's backyard, New York City, the Big Apple. She, of course, is from Crane Media and the Green Market Report. We also have a new sponsor to talk about. We're very excited about this. And in fact, if you are interested in sponsoring any of our shows, please contact me at jimmy@procannabismedia.com. That's about as easy as it gets, right? Or you could just talk to me in the chat room in just a few minutes, because our new sponsor is preroll-er.com. You've probably had a pre-roll joint at some point over the last, I don't know, 10 years since legalization has happened. And now everybody's still using flower, even though we've tried our edibles, we've tried our tinctures, but there still is a lot of people out there who like to fire up and pass that joint around. And they are mostly pre-rolls. I can't remember the last time I know anybody who actually rolled their own. Well, this machine is magnificent to watch. And if you happen to be in the dispensary business or shopping or looking for a manufacturing facility, this is a very cool machine to check out. And instead of cutting it down into a 7-second or 15-second commercial, just sit back, listen, and watch this machine work. Check it out. Coming up on We Talk News this week, MSOs in the U.S. are moving forward on a lawsuit challenging the federal illegality of cannabis. Plus, facing a deadline, the North Carolina Senate votes to keep hemp and CBD legal. Fox anchor Laura Ingram. Hey, so was that pretty cool or what? I mean, just to see everything that goes into the automation of this new adult use industry in the world of cannabis, to me, is fascinating. That is preroll-er.com. Check them out if you happen to be a business owner in the cannabis space. And we know there's plenty of you out there because we know what our analytics say to us. So I am going to kind of step over to the other side of this studio office that I have here outside of Boston. I'll join the chat room. If you have any questions at all about some of the interviews that Christopher Smith was able to corral down there in New York City. I've been to this show a few times, and I'll be honest with you, they have a superstar lineup. Tremaine Wright, who's the head of the New York Cannabis Regulatory Board, was speaking this day, Friday, and also the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, had an opportunity to speak to the crowd and to those in attendance at the CWCB today in New York City. It is a 3-day event, I'm pretty sure, because we've been doing a lot of previews of it over the last few weeks or so. And you could probably still check it out online and get down there to the Javits Center to check out all the vendors and everything else that's going on in this wild and crazy new world of weed out there. So without any further ado, without me chit-chatting for another 15 or 20 minutes before 4:20, because after all, that's only 14 minutes away, let's throw it down to the Javits Center with the host of the American Cannabis Reports, Christopher Smith. Christopher?
Hey, Jimmy, thanks so much. Thanks for tossing it over here. This is Christopher Smith again, a publisher of the American Cannabis Report, and I'm working the floor at the CWCBE conference in New York City, Cannabis World Conference and Business Expo. It's actually the longest running show here in New York. It's been up here 8 years now. I remember coming a couple of years ago, and it was kind of a lot of crickets. It was a lot of hope and a lot of anticipation, but now we are several years down the trail, and cannabis is legalized. They're working on regulations. They're working on open up dispensaries. The New York market is coming alive. And so the seriousness of this conference now is to the nines. It is all the way. The bankers are here circling around. I mean, you can spot them a mile away. You can spot the bankers. I wanted to share a couple things with you, Jimmy, a couple of observations that I've made in terms of having conversations with people. You heard me a little while ago talk with Melody Gonzalez. Melody Gonzalez is, I would say, perhaps a healthcare consultant, perhaps, just based on her career and her background. And she was talking about women with endometriosis, which does not have a cure. It affects 1 in 10 women. So that's, if you magnify that out to the scope of the population of the United States, of course, that magnifies out to about 15 million women. And yet there's only $7 million in research funding applied to it. Apparently, Hillary Clinton has just done a long piece on this. It's a major issue. Nobody's talking about it. People are not hearing it, and women are suffering for it. And I've got to tell you, in my time in the industry now, I've been in the industry 7 years, and what I've focused on is healthcare and cannabis as medicine. That's been my primary focus. There are many issues with adult use and with social equity and with equality and equal opportunity that are obviously very, very important, but my entree into the space was always through the medical side. So that's always been my personal interest. But hearing from Melody today was really eye-opening, honestly. I mean, it was like being in a seminar, hearing things that I, as a white guy, never hear. I don't hear these things. But according to Melody, what we learned is that if I know 10 women, one of them is suffering, and really suffering from endometriosis. Cannabis is a bridge between current pain and their current situation. It's not a cure, all right? It's not going to actually reverse it, but what it's going to do, it's going to reduce the pain and make life more dealable, more handleable. And of course, as we know, women hold up half the sky. Women help manage the families, largely do manage the families on their own, unfortunately, and have amazing, immense responsibilities, as well as responsibilities to work. And yet 1 in 10 of them are doing this in really terrible, crippling pain. Cannabis is a solution and a bridge. It is a better solution than opiates and other highly addictive, very dangerous pharma drugs that have long lists of side effects. Cannabis has none of those things. So and we can talk another time about how addictive it is relative to other drugs. We know some of these statistics, but cannabis is a much better solution and really important for women. And they're one of the largest pavilions here at the CWCBE is the Women Grow Pavilion. There are 30 women-owned businesses all in one collective, one group together, one sort of group of tables, one big rectangle. It's the busiest, by far, the busiest area of the show. You've been to shows before, Jimmy, and you know that there are long rows of tables on one side and the other, and eventually they end up, a lot of them end up sort of looking the same, and it's hard to determine which is which and what they're doing, and if they're even interesting to what you're bringing and what you're looking for in a business opportunity. But the Women Grow Pavilion is absolutely lit up, and it's right next to the Education Pavilion, which has, I think, maybe 10 colleges that are local in the region that all have coursework in cannabis. So this is another thing that's coming up big on the East Coast. Education obviously is so important on the East Coast and so integral to the experience, and now bringing cannabis into the normal education curriculum is huge and important, and it will hopefully help for the next generation further the work that we're all trying to do to destigmatize the plant and to make it more acceptable in society. And speaking of that, yesterday I moderated a panel on beverages, and just like with speaking with Melody, I really got a seminar in beverages and in the opportunity for beverages. And I'll talk with you about some of those opportunities and challenges at another time, but suffice to say, not only is our beverages a very fast-moving, so they talk about having the hockey stick, where your economics would, hockey stick goes straight up. Not only is the economic opportunity enormous with beverages, but I really learned an interesting thing which I'd never thought of before, which is that when you use cannabis to make beverages, what you do is, for the user, you take the smell out of it, right? So now, if I'm in a lounge, let's say, and I'm having a cannabis beverage and someone walks by, I'm just having a drink, right? Which is a very typical, normal, very popular sort of form factor they talk about, just having a beverage like at a bar, at a cafe, or whatever. If I'm smoking a joint, there's the smell, right? So the person knows down the block, and they either like it and they're attracted to it, or they hate it and they're repelled by it, but whichever, the smell lets everybody know what's happening, and it's distracting. How about it, the best term? The smell is distracting for virtually everybody on the street, but if I'm just having a beverage, it is, it's innocuous, really. So the interesting learning for me was how cannabis in beverages can be such a great equalizer, and it can reduce the stigma or eliminate the stigma, because with no smell, you don't know what I'm doing. I'm just having a nice time. If I'm not having alcohol at a bar, if I'm just having cannabis beverage, I'm less likely to get in a fight or do anything violent, as we know. It's a whole different drug. It operates differently on the body. So it's such an incredible solution. And in New York City specifically, I think it's like a $15 billion business or something, the nightlife business. There's a I don't know if it's the minister of nightlife, but it's a critical category in the city's budget. So entertainment, events, all those sorts of things have a golden, enormous opportunity for cannabis in beverages. It's a really remarkable thing, and I've learned a lot more. I'll tell you more about that later. Once again, in the background, you can probably hear Redman speaking. Redman's being interviewed. Redman, of course, has just created and announced the National Cannabis Party. They're working on building their bullet points, their messaging, and their platform. And so hopefully I'll be able to get involved with that group and help on some of that messaging. That's what I'm looking forward to doing. Later on today is going to be the mayor of New York City. Actually, in just about a half an hour, he's going to speak. After that is going to be the head of the New York Cannabis Regulatory operation or organization. She'll be here as well. So the CWCBE conference is enormous. It's the absolute top level. The mayor, the head of the state regulatory agency, Redman from the National Cannabis Party. So CWCBE is where it is. I hope you're here, and if you're not here, Jimmy, I know, sorry you're not here, you're stuck in the studio, but people in the industry, people in the New England area, in the East Coast area, really should pay attention to this conference and pay attention to who's here. And I'm really happy to be able to report from the floor. So once again, Jimmy, I'm Christopher Smith. I'll throw it back to you. Christopher Smith I'm the publisher of the American Cannabis Report, and I am a proud presenter on Green Rush Live and for all the shows on Pro Cannabis Media. So Jimmy, you're doing a great job, and I'm going to throw it back to you. Here you go.
So MRBs, or marijuana-related businesses, have some of the same issues that they face as the plant-touching businesses, but it's a little less intense for them. You still have to have a bank account with a bank that's okay with the cannabis sector because you are having financial transactions with a plant-touching business. And that plant-touching business is still considered a drug trafficker under federal standards. So you have to make sure that as an MRB, your bank is comfortable with you doing business with what's considered to be a drug trafficker. And there are banks out there that are very friendly. There's more that are friendly to MRBs than they are to the plant touching businesses. And there's a few other things out there too. It's not just banks, it's the payment processors, Square, PayPal, etc. Some of those, if you are an MRB, or even if you're selling CBD and something without THC in it, they will still potentially come through and shut you down with no notice.
It's funny you mention that. Even though we are an international company, you never know, because the way that we handle with each customers is 100% different than that model. So even though we cover the world, every customer feels like they are most important. That's what's so important in business, and same in the video management side of things. So you've got lots of competitors out there that offer similar solutions, but not one of my customers will feel like just a number. Each one of my customers and each one of our salient customers, they won't know the difference. So that's one huge difference between us and other people also, is that all of our customers, you never know that we're a global company because of how we relate to and touch every single customer.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
Hey, Jimmy, thanks very much. I'm on the floor here at CWCBE conference in New York City, And if it's a little noisy in the background, that's because Redman is speaking right in the next room from us, and he's introducing the platform for the National Cannabis Party, so that's a big deal. And almost everybody in the conference is in there, but we snuck away just to have a conversation here. I have Melody Gonzalez of Canaquini Convos. We just met, and I'm learning an incredible amount of an issue that I don't know much about, being a guy, but Melody would like to share about endometriosis and women, and how cannabis is amazingly helpful and critically important for a really, really important but under-discussed healthcare issue. So here we go. Melody, nice to see you.
Hi, Christopher. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I run a podcast called Canaquini Convos, and we talk about how women treat their physical pain, like stage 4 endometriosis, fibromyalgia, with cannabis, because modern medicine doesn't work for endometriosis. Endometriosis is a female disease that affects 1 in 10 women. Primarily, it's thought of as a hormonal, but a lot of us women have had hysterectomies. We're no longer producing estrogen, but we're still getting lesions and suffering from chronic pain every day. It's a debilitating disease that affects 1 in 10 women, and there's only $7 million worth of research going to it every year.
So putting that just sort of into perspective, 1 in 10 women, if there are 150 million women in America, 1 in 10, that means there are 15 million women at all times suffering from endometriosis, and there's only $7 million in research funding available for this really important situation. So this is a big deal that is really not getting any noise, any press.
And I would not be surprised the percentage of women who are cannabis users who have some sort of endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or some sort of chronic illness, chronic pain that affects them every day. And they're learning that cannabis can help them function without necessarily giving them all the horrible side effects from medication.
Such a big deal. Pharma has the longer list of side effects than it does actual benefits so often. And whenever you hear a commercial, you ever hear it on the radio, on the television, half of it is spent talking about the side effects. Most of them end with death, by the way. Could kill you, but take this anyway.
One of the major treatments for endometriosis is a chemotherapy called Lupron. I was put on that for 1 year. I went into a medically induced menopause, and I still developed 2 more endometriomas on my bladder.
Oh my gosh.
And I was not having any menstruation. And it was sort of like a guinea pig. Hey, we're going to give this to you for a year. Let's see. I'm still dealing with the side effects. It's been 3 years.
You're a data point now. You're just on someone's spreadsheet now, and yet you're a real flesh and blood person, and they don't really care that much about that. Your data.
Endometriosis, I was 2 months away from my master's, 1 month from getting my own department at Greenwich Hospital, and I had put 25 years into the medical field, and all of that was taken away in 1 day because the endometriosis flared and took over my bladder, and I was not able to urinate for 3 years. I would have to sit in a tub of hot water to be able to pass urine. So endometriosis affects more women than you know. If you're a guy, you may have a friend or your mom or your sister or your daughter. And we have to stop making women feel crazy for complaining about these pains. They exist. They're real.
Well, if you know 10 women, then one of them has it, period. That's the stat.
And on my podcast, we talk about bridging the gap between how medications didn't help us and how cannabis can help us. And it does help us. And we have to stop the stigma as women and mothers for using something that heals us. Cannabis is a plant. It's not a pill.
Not made in the lab. Not made in the lab.
It comes from the ground.
Is a natural thing.
And I have a small little plant myself, and I'll tell you, growers treat cannabis plants like children. It is a medicine. It is gold.
And that's another point that you're making really is about home grow and why home grow is so important, especially for patients, because they need to have access to their medicine all the time without having to run down the block for it, or even in some towns, they have to go to the next town. They have to drive. They have to leave for it. So being able to control your own medicine is a critical issue, and I don't think legislators take it seriously enough.
And as a medical patient, it's cheaper for me to get go to a pharmacy and buy a medication than it is to go to a dispensary. A dispensary in New York State charges you $50 for an eighth of cannabis, where I can go get an opiate for $5 in a copay. So it's not enough that it's available in your state. It has to be available. It has to be financially available. we shouldn't be charging people for something that grows from the ground.
Well, the idea also with the states, with the legislation, is they talk about opting out, where they allow cities or municipalities to opt out if they don't feel like having cannabis, and the people that suffer are the patients. That's what it's killing, not killing, but that sounds dramatic.
No, it is.
But
it is killing patients because there are a lot of women with endometriosis. There's a high suicide rate between women and endometriosis. There are so many women who are in so much pain that they take their own lives because they don't feel like there's an option. I mean, this is pain that has been scientifically recorded to be worse than a heart attack and worse than cancer. Yet women are expected to walk around and function on their day-to-day lives. Imagine if you're having a heart attack and they're saying to you, hey, Christopher, you still got to take care of your kids. You still got to go to work. I mean, it's immeasurable. And cannabis has the ability to heal, not the endometriomas, but the brain. And endo starts in the brain. It's pain signals. If you can control those pain signals, you can manage your endometriosis until hopefully we get a cure. We're not going to see it in my generation. I'm hoping my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, they get help, but we're not going to see it yet. We need more people like you, men, who are willing to come on in their audience and say, hey, it may not affect me, but it affects these women, and that matters to me. So that's why you and I kind of clicked, because it mattered to you that it affected me, even if it doesn't affect. And that's cannabis, helping each other, not being for self-profit, but to help others. We share in the cannabis community.
Well, most of my work in the industry has been in support of medicine, support of patients, is specifically children and veterans. But now I have a new cause to make sure that I do as much as possible to spread the word about. Chronic pain is approved in every single state where cannabis is approved as a medicine. In all 38 states, chronic pain is one of the qualifying conditions, but this gives much more clarity about what chronic pain could mean. It doesn't mean just the guy who hurt himself at the factory, the guy who played football and too many times and he hurt his knee or whatever, and his knee continues to hurt. It's not that only. It is a serious women's issue, and women hold up half the sky. It is very important that we deal with all medical conditions and the potential of cannabis to help all of us people. I feel it strongly.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you bringing light on your platform, because we need more people like you. I'm going to say, hey, let's have this conversation. If I'm sitting in a room with 10 women, one of these women is sitting here in so much pain, and she's not letting me know that right now, because we're forced to hide it.
Sure. No, that's a devastating way to live. That's terrible. I really look forward to talking to you more when we have a little more time.
Yes.
Now we're at the conference and we're running back and forth and here and there. We've got booths, we've got people, Red Man in the next room. So there's a lot to do here. I'm going to throw it back to you, Jimmy, but this has been a really great talk. Melody, it's so nice to talk with you, and we will talk more. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just... like every other night, just gonna lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Godspeed, everybody. There's nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
Hey, Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, reporting here from the CWCB conference in New York City. And I'm here with Walter Moore. Are you the founder?
I am the founder.
Founder and CEO of Cognitive Harmony Technologies. And I'll let Walter tell you about it because he has got a company that does a lot of things that you applicants into the new industry, people who are trying to get into the industry, really need to know what he knows. You need to access his services because the things you're going to run into as you're applying in this business and trying to get licensed in this business are more complicated than you know so far, and you really need Walter's help. Walter, nice to see you. Thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks for the introduction, Chris. And I started in the cannabis industry in 2019 when Illinois first legalized recreational adult use. And as someone who had been impacted by the war on drugs in my youth, had been arrested for growing marijuana, and I subsequently went into changed trajectories in my path in life, and became a software engineer. And we started looking at the process and trying to apply for a cannabis dispensary license. And we thought, oh, I got this. I got business experience. I've been working in ad tech and fintech for years and years. That this should be, something I'm capable of producing as an application. Well, I didn't know what I didn't know, and it wasn't long before I realized that most people outsource the problem for about $200,000. And
that's the whole cost of doing an application to get your license.
Yeah, what we call a white glove consulting experience, and I definitely didn't have that kind of money to throw at an application, and so we were doing it ourselves, and in the process realized, man, if I had a platform that could provide the critical components of this, and I could do most of the work myself, but I just don't have the SOPs and the templates and the example affidavits and the various technical documents that I needed in order to submit a complete competitive application. It certainly wasn't affordable, and so I didn't know that I needed the product that I spent the last year building, which is Cognitive Harmony Technologies, or we call it CHT, which is THC backwards, if you didn't catch on to that one. And so what we do is we're focused on two things: disrupting the existing paradigm of $150,000, $200,000 consulting bills just to submit an app, and lower
with no guarantee that it'll work, no guarantee. It's just you pay and bye bye.
You pay, and if it gets rejected, then you're going to pay some more to get the app fixed, so you can resubmit it and continue on the process. And so we're disrupting that because most of the time it's just a single set of documents that get retemplated for every consulting client that a firm takes on. And to me, that's an automation problem. We collect data from the user, we fill it into the templates, and generate all the docs you need for a complete app. And so by doing so, we are able to lower the price way down by automating everything to a tenth of the cost of what a fully white glove experience is off the shelf today. And create higher quality documents, less prone to error, because a lot of the consulting firms are doing this by hand. They're going in and changing
So
names.
they're transcribing, and they have misspellings. They get the numbers wrong sometimes. They backword, that kind of thing. So there's all sorts of human error opportunities the way that things are done now.
Absolutely. And the other critical component is just because you can automate the app from beginning to end doesn't mean that the applicant still doesn't need good advice. I mean, if they're new to the industry, they may not understand how to interpret certain requirements. So we have consulting services built into the platform where they can book consulting sessions as needed to have review done of critical documents and a final review done of the entire app. And so we still maintain that in the necessary places, but then automate it everywhere else.
So it must be an absolute difference for you, because you've been through this already yourself. You've had this personal experience, and now you're just trying to help others go through the process that you've already gone through. A lot of these white glove firms, of course, they've never actually applied themselves.
Right. They may have a great track record.
They do something else. They do whatever they do, but they've never actually applied for a license.
Right.
And didn't you tell me also this morning that your license, or your application rather, was returned several times because there was something missing, something that?
Yeah,
so you went through that process.
In Illinois and Chicago, we went through 5 rounds of deficiencies. Every time the state would come back, they would say, there's something missing, go find it. It's find the needle in the haystack. No real support from the state, no real support from anybody, and you got 10 days to respond with a deficiency fix. And so what we found is that it created a needle in a haystack problem. So I used my background in data science and in engineering to create a text processing system to evaluate where the holes were in the app so that we could fix it. And we ran that software on 27 applications in Illinois. All of them ended up with perfect scores. And we took the experience of that and built what's today the CHT platform. And we've included some high quality templates for standard operating procedures and all these critical business documents that you need, pro formas, and the materials that we're using have won licenses in 8 states, dozens of licenses across 8 states.
Wow. Well, it speaks for itself.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not just because Walter says so. It's actually worked.
Yeah,
it's actually been
we've
successful.
got market performance.
Fantastic. Wow. And didn't you say one other thing earlier? I
didn't know that I needed what we built when I started this process. I thought my partner and I, Charles, we come from very technical backgrounds, and we've solved some very hard problems, and we thought we were just going to knock it out of the park, and we couldn't have been more wrong. And we've spent the last 3 years figuring out, what's going on here. We want to lower the barrier to entry. We want to help the states actually implement their social equity mission statements, but because they leave a gap. They say, we're going to make the distribution of ownership in the industry look like the distribution of those who were impacted by the war on drugs, but then they put a $200,000 bridge between that actually occurring. And who has stepped in to make that happen? Nobody. So we're bringing a product to the market that can do that at the lowest cost possible, in some cases, we can make it even free. We're working with impact investors. We're working with existing producers who will do product deals to pay for the tail end of the price on this thing. So, or if
that's a massive advantage that you are able to provide to customers.
Absolutely.
Wow. So you could literally do this entire process for free if all the pieces line up. You could literally do this for nothing for certain people.
We work with certain people to maximize the value we can bring to them. In the event that they have priority status, which means social equity, women-owned, veteran-owned, impact zone, these types of qualifications, those immediately get you half off, and that's provided by us.
Okay.
Then our partner, Justice Cannabis, is if you sign a product deal with them for a retail shop, they'll pay for an additional half of what's left over. Wow. So now it's down to a quarter of the original price. If you win a license, Justice will rebate the remainder of that, so it'll cost you $0 to get our platform for free. And then we're also putting together pools of ideal candidates to present to impact investors who will pay for the enrollment in our accelerator from end to end.
So you have consulting afterwards to help them. So it's not just you give them a license and then you kick them out. You actually can continue to work with them to help them actually get their business up and running and support them in that way. I think that's magnificent.
Yeah, so we have, I would call it a product that, a platform that grows with people from licensure into operations, because once you're operational, you still don't, the problems of application compliance don't go away. You need to renew your application every year, and you're faced with a lot of the same problems. And what most companies do is, well, now they're making revenue, they can afford to pay the consulting firms to do it anyways. But we see a huge market for us once people are operational in actually helping them realize their application. Because the thing is most technology companies in the cannabis space, they back a traditional CRM or resource planning system, and they back it into the cannabis industry in a way that maximizes the value of something they've already built. We're starting at the genesis moment, the big bang of all of these entrepreneurs, these new businesses, and we're going to be there so that we can help them realize their operations once they're licensed in a way that they don't have to go back and reverse engineer their app and figure out how to set up this point of sale system or this other piece of technology in order to be compliant with their promises they originally made to the state.
So this helps them actually deliver on what they said, which will help in the next year and help in the renewal of the application, which is without having to make up the data or pull it out of somewhere. Your system is designed to organize the data in the right way for the next application.
We know a lot of businesses, once they hit that operational moment, they spend a year reverse engineering the promises they've already made to the state and trying to find systems that are compatible with the promises that they've made to the state. And so we, by having a sort of award-winning, license-winning, homogeneous platform that has just been customized for individual applications, we can then present the best possible solutions for them to move into ops.
So some very technical information. We're trying to give you a sort of a point of view of not only the benefits but some of the features, so that for the wonks out there, for the quants and the geeks and the nerds, you guys will hear it in a certain way, and people who are interested in just the benefits of getting into the industry and getting yourself licensed, this is a company that you need to be aware of and you need to talk to. I'm so glad you came by. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Good luck to you.
So I personally like QuickBooks for MRBs. I wouldn't necessarily suggest QuickBooks for a plant touching company. And the reason for that is QuickBooks is still a little iffy when it comes to having a plant touching business or even anything related to the cannabis world as one of their customers. What I typically do when I use QuickBooks for an MRB is I don't necessarily put the title of the company as a title that's obvious that it's an MRB. I'll put the name of the LLC if it's not the same name as the company. I'll create a fake name, then just change the financial statements when I go to print them out, because I don't want QuickBooks to shut my customers down or shut my account down either. But it's still one of the best tools out there for a small business to use. And it's something that I use to run my business. It's something I use to run some of the clubs and societies that I work with. And it's also what I really direct my MRBs to utilize as well for their books and records.
Very challenging. I mean, every state has something different. So from, my experience back in Colorado when it first came out to, what we have for the standards here in Massachusetts. Now we have New York, we have everything up here on the East Coast. So it's crucial, especially in the CCC here in Massachusetts, it's crucial to make sure everything is covered exactly as needed. Not too much, not too little, but right exactly what needs to be compliant.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
All right, Christopher Smith again, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, and what a find, what a catch. I've got Deborah Borchard. How about that? Fantastic. Tell me, Deborah, what's happening in the cannabis market here in New York, especially, and what kinds of things are you seeing here at the CWCBE conference?
Well, so this week actually was a shortened trading week on the New York Stock Exchange and all the exchanges because Monday was Memorial Holiday. So it was kind of a light week for business news in the cannabis industry. We did have some earnings. What I thought was kind of interesting with the earnings that we got this week is that the companies ended up having increased revenues from the fourth quarter to the first quarter. What we've seen almost this whole earnings season is companies having a great fourth quarter and then down on the first quarter. Sure. So I thought that was a really positive thing. Also this week, and now this was, I thought, a little odd, but the Allman Brothers band announced that they were coming out with their own branded cannabis strain. And I thought that was a little odd because almost everyone in the band is dead now. There's only really one founding member left. And they had a long history of, issues with hard drugs. And then they also had a lot of back and forth, like the band fell apart, regrouped. There was a lot of fighting, and they billed this cannabis as this celebration of life and wonderfulness. And I was like, really? The Allman Brothers Band? If you followed the Allman Brothers Band, you knew that they fought with each other for years. They were not love and harmony at all. So I thought that was a very odd thing this week.
Rebranding and launching a company all in one fell swoop, right?
I guess so. I just didn't quite follow that pitch, and I felt like it was a money grab. Celebrity brands have not done that well, very honestly, in sales. So, but I guess they figure, why not?
Yeah, the Grateful Dead is doing okay. Willie Nelson probably doing okay, but I think that's almost it, isn't it?
I don't believe Willie's Reserve is doing that well. I think that Burner, Be Real, Wiz Khalifa, I think the people that really had that brand recognition of cannabis within their whole personality and lifestyle were doing well. Now, Willie Nelson obviously did live that lifestyle. And I mean, he got arrested for cannabis at one point, and famously so. But from what I understand, because he's not as connected to the brand, it's just kind of licensed, that it has not done well. And cannabis consumers are very knowledgeable, and they know if these artists are very tied into the product or if they're just signing their name to it.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think even Santana as a brand you would think would be an amazing success story, and it probably has that same feel to it. He might not really be connected to it, and maybe that's not why it's not necessarily taking off.
Exactly. I think with someone like Wiz Khalifa, who was very instrumental in looking at the strains and the grow process and was really focused on it. I think you also see that with Melissa Etheridge. She was very focused on the farm. She really knew what was happening on the farm. And so I think that differentiatingness, is the authenticity of the brand and the artist.
And then there's the question about Jay-Z then, obviously, because he's so well capitalized and so big, but
that
I don't know.
Product has not done well at all. The Monogram line, it was billed as a luxury line.
So expensive.
Very expensive, and everybody just felt like they just put their name on it. Now, as someone as a reporter, for me, if I get pitched a celebrity brand, but then the celebrity is not available to talk about their brand, that to me says a lot. I think that if a celebrity is going to put their name on a brand, they should be accessible. They should be willing to do interviews, and some of these people are nothing. There's just, you can't talk to them about their brand at all.
It's a lesson for companies of all sizes, I think. Now, tell me, is there anything interesting going on? And you mentioned a stock market issue that has come up. Tell me about that.
So not long ago, a company started trading on the NASDAQ called Bright Green. And it was touted as the only cannabis company in the U.S. trading on the NASDAQ. Now, so if anybody follows any of this stuff, you know that the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange won't allow a cannabis company in America to trade because cannabis is federally illegal. So Canadian companies can do this, not U.S. So they said, oh, wow, this U.S. company is going to be trading on the NASDAQ. They said because they have a memorandum of agreement with the DEA to provide research cannabis. So that's why the NASDAQ said we're going to let this one go through. Well, upon some digging, I noticed that within their filing, they had a couple of lawsuits against them. And that's very unusual. Companies don't go public with lawsuits against them. It's very unusual. You'll settle it. You'll do anything to get rid of it.
Get it off the books.
Get it out of there. So one of them was the former CEO. And I got the court documents from the state of New Mexico. Uh-oh is right. And what happened was, now this was what's called a direct listing. So when you're an IPO, that means you open it up to the market. The shares are for anyone to buy. More shares are offered. With a direct listing, you basically just say, we've got, 1 million shares, and that's that. The only shares you can buy are the ones that are people inside the company are selling. So it's insider selling. Now, the former CEO said, when they came to him and said, we need to verify the valuation of this company, he was like, wait a minute, you're valuing this company at $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion, $5 billion, and they have no revenues. They have no plants. They have no cultivation facility. They have no revenues. And how is this company with zero? You're looking at me like, zero.
Red flags, red flags. Red flags.
So the former CEO said, I'm not putting my name onto this number. This number is not. It's misrepresenting. It's aggressive. It's fraudulent. So they said, you know what? You're out. They fired him.
Oh, okay.
They fired him.
But
they still listed at the NASDAQ. And so more digging I see in their filing, they say, well, you know what? If we don't quite live up to the NASDAQ's requirements, we may have to delist. So they're basically going to list the stock, sell their shares, and then potentially just go, and the NASDAQ's probably going to say, hey, your valuation isn't right. You're not meeting these things that we told you had to meet, these requirements, so you're going to have to delist. And by then, they will have sold what was essentially a worthless stock to unsuspecting investors. So
That's an incredible story. Good.
Yes,
A lot of legwork.
it was a lot of legwork. Hopefully it will hopefully it will warn some people not to buy the stock.
Okay, good advice. You heard it here. You heard it here from Deborah Borchert from Green Market Report. Thank you so much for stopping by.
So it's about really focusing on individual customers, because not everybody's the same. So even though the regulations are there, what's really important is actually meeting with the customers, consulting for no charge, and actually saying, hey, what do you need, Jimmy? What do you need, Don? What do you need for your solution? Because obviously we have to meet compliance, but it's about finding exactly what needs to be done, only what's needed for your exact business, and then keeping the costs low. Because there's lots of other players out there, lots of providers, but we care about spending the time to actually not only get to know you, but having our passion in the industry, in cannabis, it's really making sure we design, build exactly what you need for your situation.
We are focused solely on cannabis. There's a lot of companies that do cannabis on the side. There's a lot of accountants that work with cannabis companies, but they don't really understand cannabis. We are focused solely on cannabis companies in the cannabis space. We have team members that have been in the cannabis world for much of their careers. And we also have team members who have not been in cannabis that long. And I actually think that brings a strength to the equation, because not only do you have the side of the house that understands cannabis and the ins and outs of 280E, but also the folks that have worked at bigger companies, more structured companies, and could bring in the value of the experience they have at those companies.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
Hey, Jimmy, thank you. This is Christopher Smith again, publisher of the American Cannabis Report. I'm live at the CWCB conference, and I am incredibly lucky. I have Chef Ali, who I met yesterday, first thing in the morning at the Women Grow Pavilion, which is the busiest place in the whole show, and there must be 30 women businesses, I think, there or so.
I mean, the plant is female, so what better place to come and learn about the plant and experience the plant.
And for the first, And for the first half of the day, at least yesterday, it was absolutely the busiest place in the whole show. And I was just sort of
True
drooling
legacy
around.
operators in that space, people transition. It's amazing. That is true community here.
So, Chef Ali, the difference, as I was saying, the difference between you and other supposed chefs that I've talked to is that you are a real trained chef, and you've been a chef for 25 years, you said?
Yes.
Fantastic.
I born and bred in Queens, went to culinary school in New York, the Institute of Culinary Education, and I was a stagiaire there. I traveled backpack through Europe. Not traveled fancy, but backpack through Europe with some friends, and we made money by doing day work in restaurants. You know, you get yelled at in one language by a chef, it's the same thing. Yes, chef, right away, chef. So we needed money to stay in a hostel and drink and party, so we worked in the day and we hung out at night. And it was amazing.
But 25 years, so I mean, you're the real deal, and
I-
you've really put in the time.
For sure, yes. New York
Now
restaurants are
your company-
incredible.
Your company, High Five Edibles? That's how
High Five Edible Wonders, yes. So
Wonders, fantastic.
Edible Wonders, it's a magical journey. It truly is. Cannabis has been a part of my life for a very long time. I'm a canna mom. It's an incredible plant, and it's always, in my eyes, food. It is. It grows. It's an herb. We make medicines with tinctures. I mean, it's pretty much back to basics. And we treat the plant as it is, as an ingredient, and we make incredible pantry staples with it. So we use plant matter, and we infuse strain-specific salts, sugars, vinegars. We also do erythritol for our diabetics and for those who are trying to be insulin resistant. So we try to make it a whole body experience, and we give it to the people. So we don't have to tell you what medicated to eat. You can make what you'd like and have it yourself.
And I spoke with your brother a little bit yesterday. He's a great salesperson, by the way. Fantastic.
He is indeed.
And so he showed me some of the products. They're gorgeously done. The packaging is incredible. It's the kind of thing that everyone, I think, should have in their own kitchen.
Thank you. Aw.
I like it.
Very lovely.
I was very, very impressed, you know.
And it's very important for us to keep the price point and make sure that it's accessible for everyone. I come from a space where the product was created to be accessible, especially for moms. You know, combustion is not always conducive to life with small children. You know, it's not great. But you can have your coffee in the morning. The kids have their sippy cup. You have your coffee. And it makes your day go by a lot nicer.
Well, then there's no difference, really. You know, the moms who talk about having a glass of wine, and there's little signs you could buy in the store that say, you know, mom is
All
having a
of
glass of
that.
wine. What's the difference? What's the difference?
Well, the way that we break the stigmas is by doing it ourselves.
That's right.
You know, and my children are incredible. They are plant warriors, 13 and 9, and they see what the plant can do and the amazing effects it can have on community.
Sure.
And it's really incredible how they are able to translate information to their children, to their peers. And it's just super awesome to watch peers, like to watch the interaction between children and watch them learn from each other.
Do you have a restaurant, or do you do catering, or
No,
do you
well, we
make
do not.
products, or
We are in New York, so we have now recreational cannabis is legal.
Right.
However, it is not legal to sell or barter yet. So we are in the process of going for licensing for our manufacturing license here in New York. And we are waiting for the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, to pass down the regulations. So now they have monthly meetings, sometimes it's more than once a month, and they are releasing regulations. So now it's up to us as the community to come together and listen to these regulations, break them down, and see what will actually work. The MRTA is an amazing bill here in New York, and I believe that it was truly created for the people, by the people. Now it's up because there's space for legacy to rise. The authors of the MRTA, I believe, understood that the recreational market could not stand unless the legacy market here in New York was allowed to play. And there are so many incredible social equity clauses that are there. We just need to make sure that they come to fruition. So we have to use our power and email the Office of Cannabis Management to let them know what our opinions are and offer suggestions that can help remedy this and work for all parties involved, all of the registered organizations and the legacy market that wants to come in.
Well, and also all the different kinds of products. So your product is obviously not flower, it's not vapes, it's not what you're.
But it is plant touching.
But it's totally plant touching. What I'm saying is, I just want to make sure you're getting represented.
Oh.
Are you working with the?
Well,
the
we have an organization called the Cannabis Accountability Group, and we are trying to bridge the gap between the registered organizations and the legacy market operators, because we may not see eye to eye with everything, but we are going to be working in the same space and we have to agree with regulations. And there are lacking on both sides. So if we can come together and at least have a conversation to come up with things that are very clear and transparent for both sides, I feel that's a good sign to send to the OCM to say, listen, we're willing to work together to make this an even playing field, because there's room at this table for everyone to sit.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Well, it's great to hear that you're so active in the creation of the regulations, because so many people sort of wait for the things to drop down from heaven, and they sometimes don't get what they want, and then they can't complain.
This is our power. This is the very grassroots. I mean, I don't mean for that to sound cheesy, but that's what it is. We have to be present. We have to make sure that our regulators hear us. And now it's election season, so
they better hear. They better be listening.
They are listening. If they want people to show up at the polls, they need to listen to what the people have to say. And cannabis is truly how we can create generational wealth and revitalize our communities. You know, and the amount of power that we get with the MRTA, the municipalities receive 3% of that money. And we don't have to go and beg our towns and our cities for this money. We can fix our streets. We can put money into our schools without raising property taxes. I mean, it's for the greater good.
It really is. It really has something for everyone. Here's what I want to do. I want to loop back around to your favorite topic, which is cooking, and I want to ask you, what would be your favorite dish using some of your cannabis salts, sugars, etc.? What would be your favorite dish? Tell us all about it. Make us hungry.
So the idea of people asking what is your favorite dish, I truly enjoy watching people eat and enjoy the food. I'm trained in classical French techniques from school, and I did my concentration in South Asian cuisine, so Thai, Malaysian. My background is from the Caribbean, so food is truly a melting pot. I learned by watching my grandmother. But for me, if I'm speaking about my ingredients, my favorite delivery is my coffee in the morning.
Nice. Okay.
So I like sugar, but sugar does not like me. So I started to infuse erythritol, which is an alcohol-based sugar. So it's actually better for diabetics and people who are trying to watch their insulin because it stays static. So you can maintain a fasting state and still have your dose. Fantastic. So I put some erythritol in my coffee in the morning and I sip, and that is my most favorite way to consume.
Simple, easy, wonderful.
And it doesn't break my day. I don't have to take a moment out to go and smoke. No, it's in my coffee, and I'm getting the kids ready for school, figuring out the schedule, and trying to make sure the dog is taken care of.
Yeah, right. Keeping track of life. Absolutely. Listen, I'm so grateful that you came by. You've got a lot to do at your booth, because I know there are people lining up to see you, as they were yesterday.
Yes, everybody. It's incredible back there. I hope to see you back out there.
Absolutely. I will be there too. Great to see you. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you so
Jimmy,
much.
back to you.
So MRBs, or marijuana-related businesses, have some of the same issues that they face as the plant-touching businesses, but it's a little less intense for them. You still have to have a bank account with a bank that's okay with the cannabis sector, because you are having financial transactions with a plant-touching business. And that plant-touching business is still considered a drug trafficker under federal standards. So you have to make sure that as an MRB, your bank is comfortable with you doing business with what's considered to be a drug trafficker. And there are banks out there that are very friendly. There's more that are friendly to MRBs than they are to the plant-touching businesses. And there's a few other things out there too. It's not just banks. It's the payment processors, Square, PayPal, etc. Some of those, if you are an MRB, or even if you're selling CBD and something without THC in it, they will still potentially come through and shut you down with no notice.
It's funny you mention that. Even though we are an international company, you never know, because the way that we handle with each customers is 100% different than that model. So even though we cover the world, every customer feels like they are most important. That's what's so important in business, and same in the video management side of things. So you've got lots of competitors out there that offer similar solutions, but not one of my customers will feel like just a number. Each one of my customers and each one of our salient customers, they won't know the difference. So that's one huge difference between us and other people also, is that all of our customers, you never know that we're a global company because of how we relate to and touch every single customer.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
Hey, Jimmy, thank you so much. I am here with my new best friend, Janelle Edwards. We met yesterday, as a matter of fact, with her husband. They're here from Mississippi. They're new to the market, and I think the most important people in the market here, especially in New York, as it's coming alive, is people that are new to the market, and also people that, and this is what I found so interesting about you, is that you're not here trying to make $1 million. You're here to benefit the community like you've been doing for your whole career. To me, that is one of the most important things that we in the cannabis business can bring and that we can communicate, I think, to everyone out there. So Janelle, tell me a little bit more about your background and tell me what you're working on. And also, let's make sure we talk about Calvin Fry, who is your partner in your Mississippi adventure.
Yes, well, Calvin Fry is actually from Mississippi. I am from Savannah, Georgia, originally. I graduated from Savannah State College before it's now a university in 1989 with a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics and a minor in computer science. After that, went through teaching, my own businesses, several things, networking, and that landed me in Mississippi, where I am married to Anthony Edwards, who is from Jefferson County, Mississippi, and the city seat is Fayette, Mississippi. I had never heard of it before I actually went there.
Small town Mississippi.
Yes, it's a rural town. We are actually the fourth poorest town in Mississippi. Mississippi is the poorest state in the nation. I am the executive director of Fayette Community Service Organization, where our mission is to foster health and wealth among young men and women through service and guidance. And we've been doing, I've been doing that since 2009. So, and with
the connection, just real quickly, if pardon me, but just to me, what I've always been a champion of and what I've always found so fascinating is the opportunity not just the opportunity for profit, but the opportunity to help communities with job opportunities, with health and wellness opportunities, and this is what you've been doing all along, and now you are slipstreaming into the cannabis industry because that's exactly what the cannabis opportunity is also. So I just commend you for that.
Correct. Our major program is called the Fat to Fit Olympics, because childhood obesity is it's not a silent epidemic. People know, but we have to do something about it, and that comes with education and awareness. In doing that program over the past 10 years, we were shut down. We've been down for 2 years because of COVID, but we're coming back next year. But that program really blossomed, and it really got people self-motivated to move their body. It's just a fun day of physical activity. We've also done over 17,000 free health screenings, because people need to know their numbers, where they start. And then there's a component of where we do Let's Make a Healthy Deal. It's a game we play, and that is to increase health literacy, because what we have found is even when people go to the doctor uses such terminology that they'll shake their head, but they're really not understanding what the doctor is saying through the terminology. So health literacy is a big focus of it. And the last objective is just to have fun, getting fit, and that's what we do. So we've been doing that, but it costs money. Any program that you have, and we are strictly grassroots, even though we are award-winning, we have maintained several awards through the state. I just recently was the Remarkable Woman of Mississippi 2022 for the work that we're doing in Fayette. So we have started a business. It's seasonal. Pecans or pecans. Mississippians say pecans.
Yeah, we got it.
I'm from Georgia. I say pecans, but I'm there. And when in Rome, yeah.
You say pecans, right?
Right. So pecans, and we started that because we're considered a food desert. Every pecan season, we have to travel to the next county over, which is a 60-mile round trip. And so if you pick a 5-gallon bucket full of pecans and take them down the road, you spent that in gas money. So when we started purchasing the pecans right there in our community, it helped people. We had a gentleman to say, this year I'm going to be able to get Christmas for all of my children. This is something that is amazing. Our long-term goal is to actually have a manufacturing company where we can ship Jefferson County pecans all over the world. Now, with that being said, we want to generate economic sustainability. We need funds to fund our programs. So we're stepping into this cannabis space. And again, awareness. I didn't even know, and coming up in the air, it's like, don't do drugs, don't smoke weed, you're going to kill all your brain cells. You have all of this indoctrination to this product. Well, my mom, she's passed, but before she had a stroke. When we were doing her therapy and the left side was affected, you could see her grimace. You could see tears well up in her eyes when we were doing her therapy. Somebody told us about CBD oil, CBD cream.
Right, good. Topical, right? Yeah.
Yes, a topical. And my brother was also giving her drops too, because when she had the stroke, she developed having these seizures. And there was a medication that they gave, but when we read about it, it just wasn't a good idea. It was like, if she starts it, she'll never be able to get off of it. So the CBD drops, that minimized her seizures. And the cream, I witnessed myself. We were told by a nurse practitioner, just rub it in, let it stay on for, just massage her whole body with it and let it sit for about 20 minutes and then come back and do her therapy. And I'm telling you, No, I mean, just peaceful, no grimacing, smiling, talking while she's doing her therapy. It was a 360-degree turnaround.
It is so interesting you're saying this, Janelle, because so many people have that eyewitness experience with cannabis. They think they've heard, like you said, they've heard the reefer madness ever since we were little. We've all heard it. It's gonna gateway to hell and all of that. However, when you see it with your own eyes and you see it work, I've had that experience, you've had that experience, you're all in because you've seen it work. And we don't see that work with pharma. We don't see it the same way. We see it with cannabis, and we really don't need any more conversation about it. We're sold. And it's a plant, and the side effects, the side effects are not there. The addictive activity of opioids, all of that, none of that is there. So you've seen it firsthand.
Let's talk about that.
Well, we will talk about it next time.
Okay.
Next time we'll talk about that because we're going to throw it. We're going to throw it back to Jimmy back in the studio.
Okay.
Jimmy, thank you so much for acknowledging us here and giving us a little bit of time to go with this. Janelle Edwards from Mississippi, who's just getting started in the cannabis industry, but is doing it in such a sincere and authentic way that I really thought that everybody needed to meet Janelle and to hear her story and realize it's probably part of their own story as well. Janelle, thank you so much. You are incredible.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, take care.
So MRBs, or marijuana-related businesses, have some of the same issues that they face as the plant-touching businesses, but it's a little less intense for them. You still have to have a bank account with a bank that's okay with the cannabis sector because you are having financial transactions with a plant-touching business. And that plant-touching business is still considered a drug trafficker under federal standards. So you have to make sure that as an MRB, your bank is comfortable with you doing business with what's considered to be a drug trafficker. And there are banks out there that are very friendly. There's more that are friendly to MRBs than they are to the plant touching businesses. And there's a few other things out there too. It's not just banks, it's the payment processors, Square, PayPal, etc. Some of those, if you are an MRB, or even if you're selling CBD and something without THC in it, they will still potentially come through and shut you down with no notice.
It's funny you mention that. Even though we are an international company, you never know, because the way that we handle with each customers is 100% different than that model. So even though we cover the world, every customer feels like they are most important. That's what's so important in business, and same in the video management side of things. So you've got lots of competitors out there that offer similar solutions, but not one of my customers will feel like just a number. Each one of my customers and each one of our salient customers, they won't know the difference. So that's one huge difference between us and other people also, is that all of our customers, you never know that we're a global company because of how we relate to and touch every single customer.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
Hey there, Jimmy. Thanks so much. Listen, I am at CWC conference in New York City, and only in New York do you find some of the most amazing people and most important and significant people from the legacy market, from the long-term market. I've just met with Eric Canori. He's just put out a book called Pressure. Eric Canori, I might not get all of this correct, but you are the largest high-end dealer of cannabis on the East Coast, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the early 2000s, I was one of the largest high-end marijuana dealers in the East Coast of the United States. I smuggled well over $300 million worth of high-end weed all along the East Coast I had accounts in every single state between New Orleans and Boston. So I had drivers, warehouses. I did it all without a gun. I was a ghost. The government never knew I existed. Actually, my private investigator, who James Patterson wanted to write a book about, he's very connected with the government. He's like, we've never seen anybody get to your level in the game without the government knowing.
Especially with no violence.
Yeah, no violence. But there's bigger players than me, but a lot of them have informants floating around, taking down loads. I was a ghost. They didn't even know my name. I eventually got popped, wrong place, wrong time. They had a GPS unit under one of the trucks that came to one of my properties. They caught me with a couple million cash. Didn't know who I was. I started digging deeper. I got bailed out, getting ready for trial. Rearrested for laundering money to pay my legal fees.
Okay. Let me grab this for one
Yeah.
second.
I apologize.
No. I just want to make sure that we're perfectly all lit up here.
So rearrested. This time thrown in no bail. Sitting in prison, sitting in jail, moved all around. My lawyer says, after a couple years, he comes to me, hey, give them the rest of your money and they'll let you go. They wanted me to work undercover from day one. I couldn't do it. I couldn't live with myself. I was just like, I'll rot away and die.
You're not a switch.
Yeah. So basically, well, it's all in this book. You'll see exactly, I'm not going to get, that's a long story. You'll see exactly what happened. But basically, they came to me, he goes, hey, give them the rest of your money, they'll let you go. I go, how can we get in writing? Like, no, you can't buy your way out of jail, but I trust them.
Okay.
I go in the woods, in shackles, in upstate New York, in the rain, dig up close to $10 million worth of gold bars that I had buried over the years, give it to the federal government. They're surrounding me with AR-15s, 20 agents in the woods, give them the money, give them the gold, and next day I'm out. Yeah.
It's a screenplay, right?
Yeah. It's all in the book. But one thing you need to know is this isn't just a drug story. This is a story about love and acceptance, trying to fit into your tribe. Because listen, I didn't just start selling weed because I want to be a baller. I was in a position where literally I didn't know where I was going to get my next meal or where to sleep as a kid. And it was like I tried selling candy. I made a little money, but not enough to afford the basic needs. So I started selling weed, and I continued selling in college, and I became one of the best. The best because I showed up on time. I always met my customers' expectations. And the story, though, is about trying to fit in. Like, it was tough being a kid and not having the newest sneakers or not having a pretty girl look at me. And I really thought maybe if I had new sneakers or this or that, a girl would notice me. So I figured I needed money to do that. And once I got a taste of the money, the girls came, the friends came. But 90% of them were there for the wrong reason. And I didn't learn that till I was stripped naked in a prison cell, sitting there looking in a scratched up mirror and basically like, this is who I am, this is who I was, this is what I'm doing. Wow. All we really want to do is feel good and be loved and fit in with our tribe. And we're doing a bunch of crazy things, running around like maniacs to be recognized. There's a difference between external validation and internal validation. Most of my self-worth was formed on external validation by others. You know, like the like button, it took.
I have to tell you, this is not typical drug dealer speak, by the way. This is not the usual conversation.
What do you want me to talk about? You want me to talk about Hell's Angels, bikers smuggling shit at night? You want me to talk about? You want me to talk about?
I want you to be exactly who you are.
I can tell you. I can tell you stories. I can tell you stories where there's been shootouts, but I never carried a gun. I didn't need a gun because I paid the tab. I didn't do anything wrong, and like money keeps the thing. I was the money guy.
Yeah.
I keep the wheels spinning.
It's
So
fascinating.
nobody's gonna come after me. But yeah, things happen. Like I sat at always 100 miles from the Canadian border at 2 a.m. as a truck comes over the border, and I unload that truck, make sure it gets safe to the warehouse, and then I go back to my girl and say, "Hi, baby."
I tell you, man, I got to tell you, if your book is anywhere as interesting and unique and as exciting as you are, I got to tell you, anyone who out there has got to get a hold of this book, Pressure. And any agents out there, you better be looking at this as a screenplay, because this is the real deal, the real story from the real guy. And this is an unbelievable story, and you have got an unbelievable point of view and perspective and a way that you tell your story, completely unique. I'm going to wish you all the best of luck, but I don't think I have to. I think you're going to handle it yourself.
I appreciate that, Chris.
Fantastic.
I'm grateful that you took the time to interview me.
Absolutely. Really great to meet you, and I'm so glad to have you on the show. I'm going to throw it back to you, Jimmy. There you go.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, MSOs in the U.S. are moving forward on a lawsuit challenging the federal illegality of cannabis. Plus, facing a deadline, the North Carolina Senate votes to keep hemp and CBD legal. Fox anchor Laura Ingraham causes a stir by blaming the normalization of cannabis on the mass shootings in America. And all cannabis business eyes and advocates are in New York City again, this time for the big CWCB Expo. Christopher Smith and Deborah Borchardt with their report from that trade show on We Talk News, next with Elena Pinto. Cannabis Media original content is supported by Salient Systems, your trusted name in video surveillance for the cannabis industry, and by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, CPA services for the cannabis industry, and by stylighting.shop. Log on today to get your grow kit.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto reporting for Pro Cannabis Media. Over the past decade, 19 states have legalized the adult use of cannabis. 38 states have medical programs and have decriminalized the plant. Now, multi-state operators like Curaleaf, Tar, Ascend, and others have hired a dream team of attorneys who are preparing to challenge the federal laws that forbid interstate commerce. They also will challenge the exemption that keeps cannabis businesses from deducting operating expenses, something every other industry in America can do. And with more on this, here is Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast with our DC report.
Hi, this is Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC report. A group of cannabis businesses have retained a top legal team to sue the federal government over policies that impede their legal operations. According to Ascend Wellness Holdings CEO Abner Curtin, the actions are an industry-wide effort potentially involving at least 6 major cannabis companies. One action would focus on ending the federal ban on interstate cannabis commerce and contesting the constitutionality of the Controlled Substances Act. Another would center around eliminating IRS Code 280E, which prevents cannabis businesses from claiming the same federal tax deductions that are allowed for other businesses. Curtin says the coalition has retained Boies Schiller Flexner LLP, a law firm known for its involvement in some high-profile litigation. Other potential participants include companies TerraSend and Curaleaf and the American Trade Association of Cannabis and Hemp. A Maryland official is asking the Justice Department to investigate the FBI's system for reporting cannabis-related arrests. Eric Sterling, a member of the Montgomery County, Maryland Policing Advisory Commission, sent a letter to the DOJ Inspector General urging the division to look into problems with the Uniform Crime Reporting Program as it pertains to marijuana. Sterling says the UCR is creating confusion that results in flawed data, which could impact policymaking, including police funding. At issue is how state and local law enforcement interpret the UCR on what constitutes an arrest. Some localities categorize a civil citation for cannabis infractions punishable by fines alone as an arrest for a narcotic violation. However, not all localities nationwide or even within Maryland have adopted that interpretation. This results in arrest numbers being either inflated or underreported, depending on the interpretation. Either way, Sterling says the ambiguity is causing police departments to, quote, publish false and misleading data about marijuana violations. Virginia lawmakers are considering creating a new criminal misdemeanor for possession of more than 4 ounces of marijuana in public. Just over a year ago, Virginia legalized possession of up to 1 ounce of cannabis for personal use and home cultivation of up to 4 plants. This new provision comes as part of a new 2-year state budget published this week. In response, Marijuana Justice Virginia Executive Director Chelsea Higgs Wise sent an email to state assembly members urging them to, quote, stop finding more ways to criminalize Virginians. A special session is meeting this week to consider the budget proposal. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
What you might not know is that in 1969, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act was unconstitutional. A Harvard professor named Timothy Leary used a self-incrimination defense to win his case, and that stood for just about 2 years before President Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act in May of 1971. That law listed cannabis as a Schedule I drug with supposedly no medical benefits. So that is why cannabis is still federally illegal. In New York, the Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo, or the CWCB, is a huge 3-day trade show event. Over 10,000 people are expected at the Javits Center in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams will be giving a speech on Friday, and the head of the New York Cannabis Regulatory Board, Tremaine Wright, will also speak. And that's where you will find our own Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report and Deborah Borchardt of the Green Market Report.
All right, Christopher Smith again, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, and what a find, what a catch. I've got Deborah Borchardt. How about that? Fantastic. Tell me, Deborah, what's happening in the cannabis market here in New York, especially, and what kinds of things are you seeing here at the CWCBE conference?
Well, so this week actually was a shortened trading week on the New York Stock Exchange and all the exchanges because Monday was Memorial Holiday. So it was kind of a light week for business news in the cannabis industry. We did have some earnings. What I thought was kind of interesting with the earnings that we got this week is that the companies ended up having increased revenues from the fourth quarter to the first quarter. What we've seen almost this whole earnings season is companies having a great fourth quarter and then down on the first quarter. Sure. So I thought that was a really positive thing. Also this week, and now was, I thought, a little odd, but the Allman Brothers band announced that they were coming out with their own branded cannabis strain. And I thought that was a little odd because almost everyone in the band is dead now. There's only really one founding member left. And they had a long history of, well, issues with hard drugs. And then they also had a lot of back and forth, like the band fell apart, regrouped. There was a lot of fighting. And they build this cannabis as this celebration of life and wonderfulness. And I was like, really? The Allman Brothers Band? If you followed the Allman Brothers Band, you knew that they fought with each other for years. They were not love and harmony at all. So I thought that was a very odd thing this week.
Rebranding and launching a company all in one fell swoop, right?
I guess so. I just didn't quite follow that pitch, and I felt like it was a money grab. Celebrity brands have not done that well, very honestly, in sales. So, but I guess they figure, why not?
Yeah, the Grateful Dead is doing okay. Willie Nelson probably doing okay, but I think that's almost it, isn't it?
I don't believe Willie's Reserve is doing that well. I think that Burner, Be Real, Wiz Khalifa, I think the people that really had that brand recognition of cannabis within their whole personality and lifestyle were doing well. Now, Willie Nelson obviously did live that lifestyle, and I mean, he got arrested for cannabis at one point, and famously so. But from what I understand, because he's not as connected to the brand, it's just kind of licensed, that it has not done well. And cannabis consumers are very knowledgeable, and they know if these artists are very tied into the product or if they're just signing their name to it.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think even Santana as a brand you would think would be an amazing success story, and it probably has that same feel to it. He might not really be connected to it, and maybe that's not why it's not necessarily taking off.
Exactly. I think with someone like Wiz Khalifa, who was very instrumental in looking at the strains and the grow process and was really focused on it. I think you also see that with Melissa Etheridge. She was very focused on the farm. She really knew what was happening on the farm. And so I think that is that differentiatingness, is the authenticity of the brand and the artist.
And then there's the question about Jay-Z then, obviously, because he's so well capitalized and so big, but I don't know.
That product has not done well at all. The Monogram line, it was billed as a luxury line.
So expensive.
Very expensive, and yeah, and everybody just felt like they just put their name on it. Now, as someone as a reporter, for me, if I get pitched a celebrity brand, but then the celebrity is not available to talk about their brand, that to me says a lot. I think that if a celebrity is going to put their name on a brand, they should be accessible. They should be willing to do interviews, and some of these people are nothing. There's just, you can't talk to them about their brand at all.
It's a lesson for companies of all sizes, I think. Now, tell me, is there anything interesting going on? And you mentioned a stock market issue that has come up. Tell me about that.
So, not long ago, a company started trading on the NASDAQ called Bright Green. And it was touted as the only cannabis company in the U.S. trading on the NASDAQ. Now, so if anybody follows any of this stuff, you know that the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange won't allow a cannabis company in America to trade because cannabis is federally illegal. So Canadian companies can do this, not U.S. So they said, oh, wow, this U.S. company is going to be trading on the NASDAQ. They said because they have a memorandum of agreement with the DEA to provide research cannabis. So that's why the NASDAQ said we're going to let this one go through. Well, upon some digging, I noticed that within their filing, they had a couple of lawsuits against them. And that's very unusual. Companies don't go public with lawsuits against them. It's very unusual. You'll settle it. You'll do anything to get rid of it.
Get it off the books.
Get it out of there. So one of them was the former CEO. And I got the court documents from the state of New Mexico. Uh-oh is right. And what happened was, now this was what's called a direct listing. So when you're an IPO, that means you open it up to the market. The shares are for anyone to buy. More shares are offered. With a direct listing, you basically just say, we've got, 1 million shares, and that's that. The only shares you can buy are the ones that are people inside the company are selling. So it's insider selling. Now, the former CEO said, when they came to him and said, we need to verify the valuation of this company, he was like, wait a minute, you're valuing this company at 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion, and they have no revenues. They have no plants. They have no cultivation facility. They have no revenues. And how is this company with zero? You're looking at me like, yeah, zero.
Red flags, red flags, red flags, red flags, red flags.
So the CEO, former CEO, said, I'm not putting my name onto this number. This number is not. It's misrepresenting. It's aggressive. It's fraudulent. So they said, you know what? You're out. They fired him.
Oh, okay.
They fired him.
But
they still listed at the NASDAQ. And so more digging I see in their filing, they say, well, you know what? If we don't quite live up to the NASDAQ's requirements, we may have to delist. So they're basically going to list the stock, sell their shares, and then potentially just go, oh, and the NASDAQ's probably going to say, hey, your valuation isn't right. You're not meeting these things that we told you you had to meet, these requirements, so you're going to have to delist. And by then, they will have sold what was essentially a worthless stock to unsuspecting investors. So
that's an incredible story. Good.
Yes, it was a lot of legwork. Hopefully it will say, hopefully it will warn some people not to buy the stock.
Okay, good advice. You heard it here. You heard it here from Deborah Borchardt from Green Market Report. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Now it's time to move into our state-by-state roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. Mississippi is one of the newer states that decriminalized cannabis and approved a medical program over the past year. That program launched this past week. And on June 1st, the first applicants for a medical card were submitted. One state that passed its medical law way back in 2008 was Michigan. And needless to say, that state has a mature market now. So here's our mature correspondent from that state, Rick Thompson.
Hello, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Well, it's money versus money in Menominee as cannabis companies battle it out over who won and who lost in the city's adult use retail licensing awards. Rise and the Fire Station were the big winners of the city's recreational cannabis retail licensing scheme. Loom, Higher Love, Highwire Farms, New Group, and Green Farm have filed suit to block the licenses, stating the city of Menominee failed to follow Open Meetings Act requirements and that there were illegal communications between the representatives for some companies and city officials. Former Michigan Attorney General Mike Cox represents Rise, one of the winners, and it was revealed he'd stopped by for a little chat in a private setting with the city manager. Now, the two men claim it was all friendly and there was no business discussed, but was there? We don't know, because Rise refuses to surrender documents to the losing cannabis firms, which would clarify if decisions had been made prior to that conversation or not. Now, the case resumes in court Thursday, and the judge has ordered Rise to play fair and give up the documents requested in this case. Now, do you have a predictive nutrient optimizing algorithm? Well, I do, but it's my belly telling me when I'm hungry. If you're in the business of raising cannabis plants, one Dearborn Heights company says they're looking for a better way to grow bouncy, beautiful buds with less water, fewer newts, and a smaller electric bill. Draz Canna, which sounds like a really bad villain name from a 007 movie, was idle until 2021, but now claims to be setting the global world of eco-friendly cultivation on fire. They believe their new method of constant monitoring can increase plant yield, quality, and taste for users of indoor or hybrid greenhouse technologies. I can't comment on the science of their endeavor, but included along with the company's May 27 press release was a picture which doesn't really inspire confidence. Their high-tech system looks like a series of black Home Depot buckets set up in a standard basement hydro drip system with hoses held in place by duct tape. Now, we had more sophisticated systems at Big Daddy's in 2009. Here's a cautionary tale to those who would make bold claims about being an industry leader, and make sure your supporting photography looks like an industry leader, not like somebody who snapped an iPhone picture of their neighbor's homemade caregiver flood and drain setup. The Cannabis Regulatory Agency just this week announced their quarterly review meeting on June 16th and revealed the special subject for discussion at that meeting: should Michigan's rules requiring flower products to be prepackaged? Should state rules not allow retailers to sell bulk flower? Many cannabis retailers order flower in bulk and sell it deli style, so customers can see what they're receiving prior to purchase, and they weigh out and package each order fresh into the customer's specifications. Many cannabis consumers in Michigan refuse to purchase cannabis in prepackaged containers, which means a decision to require prepackaging will drive some back into the unregulated marketplace. Prepackaging is an environmentally unfriendly requirement. It increases the cost of cannabis to the consumer and eliminates the personal choice Michigan's regulated marketplace has so generously offered to date. A survey of internet respondents via social media shows most customers disfavor eliminating bulk flower purchases. Previous sessions of this nature have been held on remediation labeling and conversion oil. The CRA will take comments either in written format or in direct testimony at the meeting itself. Well, the first social consumption lounge open to the public has launched in Kalkaska, a small community in the northern Lower Peninsula. The Kalkushka Lounge is located right next door to the Botanical Company, a cannabis retailer, and was created as a joint venture between BOCO and Real Leaf Solutions, which is a Kalkaska cannabis cultivator. The lounge allows indoor consumption of cannabis and food, both of which are available for delivery from local shops. The lounge is downtown and sits right on the main drag through town. I was invited to a special premiere for the lounge prior to its public opening on June 1st, and it is a fantastic place with a great design and wonderful people. Although the opening of Kalkushka is a win for the principals involved, it's a bigger win for the entire lounge industry, which is a brand new regulated license type in Michigan. In a year filled with firsts, this one really feels like a significant step forward. Congratulations, Kalkushka Lounge. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Fox News anchor Laura Ingraham is one of the loudest conservative voices on that network, and she stirred up quite a flurry of comments after she said that she thinks the recent rash of mass shootings in the US may be tied to the normalization of the legalization of cannabis in many states. Media Matters reports that Ingraham said in a segment called "The Unintended Consequences of Normalizing Pot" should be considered a contributing factor to the violence that has rocked our nation. She then cited a New York Times report that the shooter in Uvalde was a cannabis consumer, and that report was later retracted from online edition of the Times. Ingraham, though, who is no fan of the Times, believes it was pulled to protect the emerging multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry. So let's go down to Florida to check in with Heather Allman from the Cannabis Law Report.
Thank you, Elena. It's time for the weekly Florida Report from We Talk News. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report. CanPay has officially expanded its reach to nearly all of Florida's cannabis consumers. On June 2nd, Florida fully adopted CanPay, the largest legitimate payment network for cannabis merchants and consumers. Now the platform is accepted at 95% of the state's medical cannabis treatment centers, and nearly all of Florida's medical cannabis patients can opt to use CanPay at the register. For those unfamiliar, CanPay is an easy-to-use app that allows consumers to pay at retailers with a simple debit from their checking account. CanPay CEO Dustin Ades said, quote, "We're thrilled to be able to offer all of Florida's cannabis consumers fast, free, and safer-than-cash transactions." Years of research have proven that cannabis has powerful anti-anxiety properties. In fact, a study conducted in 2018 by Washington State University and published in the Journal of Affective Disorders found that a single puff of cannabis that is high in CBD and low in THC was enough to reduce depression symptoms. 2 puffs made patients feel less anxious, and after 10 puffs, they were less stressed. But much less is known about the specific ratio of cannabinoids that works best to alleviate anxiety. So how much cannabis is required to help reduce anxiety? Florida researchers intend to find out with a new large-scale medical cannabis study launched this week that will explore the best CBD-THC ratio for treatment of anxiety specifically. The study, led by Florida Gulf Coast University, Relief App, and Canna MD, aims to further clarify what ratio works best. Researchers will track 1,000 patients who will report their experiences while using medical cannabis. These users agreed to take part in the research and over a course of 45 days will report before and after using cannabis products by answering daily anxiety-related questions using their smartphones. This will track details about cannabis use, side effects, and associated outcomes related to symptom relief. The study is not, however, asking participants to change how much cannabis they use. Lead researcher Nathan Pipitone says the study is preliminary groundwork that will open the door to allow more rigorous research. In other news, Curate, a cannabis IT and security services provider, announced on Monday it was expanding into the Florida cannabis market with the acquisition of the Coral Springs-based cannabis IT services firm Real Cloud Pros. According to CEO Eric Schlissel, Curate services will help the state's MSOs maintain compliance, stabilize costs, and continue growth, but can also help smaller operators use technology and IT best practices to survive and compete. Since 2016, Curate has grown tremendously through strategic acquisition moves and partnerships with leading cannabis tech innovators in both software and hardware. Over the coming weeks, Curate will be working to smoothly transition RCP's clients to their system, and as a combined team, they will have the scale and expertise to serve the needs of the entire Florida cannabis market. Curate will also be taking the place of Real Cloud Pros as an exhibitor at the 6th Annual Cannabis Law, Accounting, and Business event in Miami on June 3rd and 4th. That's a wrap for the We Talk News Florida Report. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report.
One thing that has been pretty consistent during this normalization of cannabis consumption in our country is as soon as voters give the thumbs up to adult use, gifting cannabis becomes commonplace. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont is trying to stop that trend in his state by signing into a law a fine of $1,000 if you are caught gifting cannabis. Now, you can still give cannabis as a gift free of charge, but don't charge $75 for a t-shirt and throw in 1/8 of an ounce as a bonus. When legal states open their first legal adult use stores, this gifting practice usually stops. And we head up to Vermont now for the Green Mountain States Report with RN Jessie Lynn Dolan of Nurse Grown Organics.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the We Talk News Vermont Report. The Vermont Cannabis Control Board approved 7 more outdoor cultivation licenses, voted on a summer meeting schedule, and discussed fire safety with Vermont Division of Fire Safety Regional Manager Landon Wheeler. The board has received 226 license applications. 62 are incomplete, largely due to minor errors. One social equity applicant was denied because while the applicant was convicted many years ago for a cannabis offense, they were not incarcerated as a result of the conviction. Bold decision by the board. Burlington's Burn Gallery is holding a summer bong sale throughout the month of June, so check it out. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
Here in the Bay State of Massachusetts, you will find one of the nation's largest multi-state operators, Curaleaf. That company and 5 other MSOs are pooling their legal evidence to take on the federal cannabis laws. And in the meantime, the state has passed $3 billion in sales. Ron Marshalsea has our Massachusetts Cannabis Report.
I'm Ron Marshalsea for We Talk News. This is the Massachusetts Cannabis Report. Canna Provision's growing facility in Sheffield has a room dedicated to growing 5 different strains of cloned cannabis plants. Cultivation Director Greg Chemdog Shanofsky oversees the cloning process and says it only takes a few weeks for these plants to grow. And for the first time, about 500 of these clones will be available at Canna Provision's store in Lee the first weekend in June. Shanofsky will be there to help people get started growing at home, and he says if you can grow good vegetables, you can grow just fine flower. Local cannabis testing laboratory MCR Labs has released a new testing suite designed to diagnose microbial issues in plants. With this new service, cultivators can prevent future outbreaks by being able to monitor their grow environment closely for any potential contamination sources, avoiding a full-on outbreak altogether. Jonathan Wanney, MCR's Director of Business Development, was quoted as saying, "It's really a game changer for growers, as microbial outbreaks are not an if, but a when issue. The biggest value for them is identifying the specific species behind the outbreak. Once you know what species you're working with, you can develop a targeted remediation plan that's going to be much more effective than a generic remediative method." These tools are meant to provide cultivators with actionable data on their grow to aid in the production of happy, healthy plants. And finally, Tilt Holdings LLC announced their dispensary Commonwealth Alternative Care will be expanding its home delivery of medical and adult use cannabis starting June 1st. The dispensary to door service started being primarily offered on the South Shore, but is now offered in South Boston, Cambridge, and Quincy, plus the surrounding areas. To serve this greater area, CAC expanded its relationship with Braxton Pistols, a locally woman-owned and veteran-managed social equity cannabis delivery operator. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
Just in case you were keeping score at home, there are now 19 legal adult use states in the United States, and one of the newer ones is New Jersey. And many of the 18 medical dispensaries that are operating there got the first crack at the new adult use market. Well, it looks like Verano will be upping that total to 19. Jill Goldsberry has our New Jersey report.
This week, Jersey City officials have expressed concerns about cannabis distributors in Jersey City. The Jersey City Planning Board approved the application of Cannabis Place 420 Corp. Which will operate an adult use cannabis dispensary at 1544 Kennedy Boulevard, which happens to be in close proximity to three public schools. And despite the concerns of parents and school officials, school trustee Lorenzo Richardson said a dispensary this close to schools is a recipe for disaster. However, under city regulations, a cannabis facility cannot be within 200 feet of a school or playground. Cannabis Place actually happens to be more than 200 feet away. So we'll see how this plays out, because the Board of Education Vice President Gina Bertabello urged the Planning Board to wait to approve. In other news, Massachusetts-based Uma Flowers is making the move to New Jersey. The dispensary has just been approved to open in our Garden State, and they've been awarded a recreational license. And this will be, as I said, located in Morristown, New Jersey. It'll be Morristown's very first dispensary. It'll be located at 102 Ridgedale Avenue. And Uma Flowers, if you do know them from Massachusetts, they're located in Pepperell, and they opened recently in December, founded by two sister-in-laws with a background in the health sector for the past 5 years. So welcome to New Jersey, Uma Flowers. We look forward to visiting you in the near future. I am Jill, and that's the New Jersey Cannabis Report for We Talk News.
The first legal state in the nation, Washington State, has always been at the forefront of the cannabis industry, and that might be happening again. Josh Kincaid of the Talking Hedge tells us there is now a manufacturing company out there that has created a pre-roll tube from recycled material. Here's his report this week.
I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge with the Washington State Cannabis Report for We Talk News. The cannabis industry is dealing with a lot of packaging waste, but a Washington cannabis company is manufacturing pre-rolled doob tubes from recycled material made locally for less than it costs to make overseas. Individual pre-roll joints come in plastic doob tubes that actually aren't recyclable. In California, Oregon, and Colorado, $250 million in doob tubes were sold in just one 12-month period. And so if you think about that spread over the dozens of states that are regulating adult use cannabis and all of the material going into landfills, it gives you a sense of the scope of the problem. To break it down, there are some limiting options available to the biodegradable plastics that are really not priced to be on the market and are outliners. The majority of doob tubes that are made are non-recyclable plastic because it's cheaper. But even those that are made out of recyclable plastic, unfortunately, the recycling machines have openings that allow small items to fall through. So any piece of plastic smaller than 3 inches in size is going into a landfill. Washington State is trying really hard to reduce the amount of contamination or diversion of the supply chain from cannabis growers to retailers to consumers. But they weren't thinking about the combined impact of all that packaging going into landfills. The impact is going to be a reduction of single-use plastics, a quick turnaround time with zero waste U.S. manufacturing. So Snowco Packaging is a leader in waste reduction impacts, and they're having invested in a mold that brings the most popular joint doob tube packaging from overseas to Everett, Washington, and they're making this child-resistant doob tube from 100% recycled polypropylene at a competitive price compared to overseas products, with the potential to reduce over 40 tons of cannabis waste from landfills. Next week, you guys are going to find out more about Washington State's cannabis scene, but with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge, reporting for We Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.
And finally, tonight, a study on the studies and research of cannabis. That's right. There's a new study published by the Journal of Cannabis Research that is looking at the more than 30,000 research studies on cannabis from 1879 to 2021. Believe it or not, there has been more than $1.5 billion dedicated to that cannabis research. Most of these studies have been conducted by agencies who are looking for dangers of the cannabis plant. In fact, this new study discovered the bias in some of those reports containing the words that are harm associated. Dependence, addictive, forensic, drug, and abuse were used more often than others. So while many of our policymakers are urging more research, the Journal of Cannabis Research wants to be able to conduct those studies without the bias of the substance abuse community. And that'll do it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media. It's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it and research it responsibly. We'll see you next time.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.